Since the 80s, the Utah Jazz have been one of the most successful franchises in the NBA. And this level of success is a direct result of the winning culture that has been breeded in Utah for the past several decades. So it should be expected. But the reason why it's impressive is because Utah is located in a small market. Now, most people would have you believe that it is nearly impossible for a small market team to build anything of substance without tanking because there aren't any valuable options in the offseason. However, Utah has defied traditional logic for several decades now. Karl Malone, John Stockton, Mark Eaton, Andre Kirilenko, Deron Williams, Carlos Boozer, Gordon Hayward, all players that have participated in the rich culture of the Utah Jazz, but none of which were drafted in the lottery. And if they were, that lottery pick originally belonged to another team. Now here we are in the year 2021, and they've done it again. The Utah Jazz have built an elite level team without utilizing any of their draft picks. So, how did they do it? We begin during the 2010-2011 season, where after 4 successful years led by Carlos Boozer, Deron Williams, and head coach Jerry Sloan, the Utah Jazz were forced in a different direction after losing all 3 key pieces within an 8-month span. Carlos Boozer took his talents to Chicago, head coach Jerry Sloan retired in the middle of the season, and Deron Williams, who might have played somewhat of a role in Jerry Sloan retiring in the middle of the season, forced his way out of Utah and to the New Jersey Nets with a trade. Now from that trade, the Jazz would receive some valuable assets. 26-year-old Devin Harris, 2 unprotected first-round picks, some cash, and most importantly, a 19-year-old Derek Favors, who was the 3rd overall pick in the 2010 draft in the middle of his rookie season. And pairing those assets with Al Jefferson, a young Paul Millsap, and an even younger rookie Gordon Hayward left a little bit of optimism in the immediate future, as even though by the end of the 2010-2011 season, the Utah Jazz were not able to make the playoffs, but they were able to bounce back in the 2011-2012 season with a playoff appearance. But this small amount of success was shortly lived, because in the 2012-2013 season, the Jazz would miss the playoffs in a tough Western Conference and went into the offseason looking to regroup and committing to the younger players. The commitment included allowing veterans such as Mo Williams, Al Jefferson, and Paul Millsap all to walk in free agency. The Jazz also participated in a 3-team trade in which they sent Randy Foye to the Denver Nuggets, and in return they received 3 expiring contracts and 2 unprotected first-round picks, and primarily that transaction was to just make sure that the Jazz were able to meet the salary floor. But easily the biggest offseason move in player acquisition is what the Utah Jazz were able to do during the 2013 draft night. And it wasn't even because of their own first-round pick. Speaking of which, with the 9th overall selection, the Utah Jazz decided to draft Trey Burke, a 6-foot scoring point guard who was projected to help this offense significantly because they desperately needed some scoring output in the backcourt. But again, that wasn't even the biggest acquisition. Later on that night, with the 27th overall pick, the Denver Nuggets selected 7-foot defensive big man Rudy Gobert, who was immediately traded to the Utah Jazz for another young prospect by the name of Eric Green in cash consideration. Gobert, as we all know, would turn out to be not only a great rim protector, but one of the league's best defenders for the next upcoming years, but it did take some time to get to that point, so let me not get too far ahead of myself. Because during the 2013-2014 year, it was easily one of the worst seasons in franchise history. Utah was projected to only win 26 games, and a huge reason for this has a lot to just do with the lack of experience on the team, as 11 out of the 17 players on the roster had no more than 3 years of experience in the league. The Jazz finished the season with a record of 25-57, again making it one of the worst seasons in franchise history, and they ranked as one of the worst offense and defensive teams in the NBA, with the only upside throughout this entire year was the growth of Gordon Hayward, as he showed flashes of potentially being a future All-Star in the league and finished the year averaging 16-5-5. And oh yeah, let me not forget, by the end of the year, head coach Ty Corbin lost his job, and to replace him was a rookie head coach by the name of Quinn Snyder. Now heading into the 2014 offseason, and the Utah Jazz yet again found an unconventional way of adding talent to their roster. And what makes it even more impressive is that it wasn't even with a draft pick. Entering the 2014 draft, the Jazz had a top 5 pick, making it the second time this would occur in over 30 years. And with the 5th overall selection, Utah would select 6'5" point guard Dante Exum, who had a lot of potential entering the NBA as he was projected to be the next Penny Hardaway. Unfortunately, this wouldn't pan out, but the Utah Jazz did not end draft night empty-handed, because later on in the first round, with the Golden State Warriors draft pick that they received during the Randy Foye transaction, the Utah Jazz drafted Rodney Hood, a swingman who exceeded all expectations and has been a really consistent producer in the NBA. But even with that steal in the draft, that wasn't even the best acquisition from the Jazz in the 2014 offseason, because just a few days after the draft, the Utah Jazz picked up 6'8" undrafted prospect Joe Ingles off of waivers. Ingles would continue his career as a Utah Jazz, and as many people know, he is easily one of the most overlooked role players in the league, a feisty swingman who is able to knock down big shots and is a great sharpshooter. But again, getting a little bit ahead of myself. The Jazz ended the 2014 offseason extending Gordon Hayward and went into the 2014-2015 season with very low expectations, and those expectations would be exceeded by the end of the year. Thanks to Quinn Snyder's defensive-first coaching style that also aided the fast development of Rudy Gobert, the Jazz were able to have a very respectable bounce-back season, especially when you take into consideration that practically every player on the roster was very inexperienced. And again, a huge reason for this improvement has a lot to just do with the development of Rudy Gobert, who came out the gate looking very strong and producing at a very high rate within a small amount of playing time that he was receiving. But as the season continued, Gobert would receive more playing time, which was a positive for Gobert and the organization, but sadly all parties weren't happy. Enes Kanter, who at the time was another young player on the team, became disgruntled with the fact that his role on the team was starting to diminish. Because of this, Kanter eventually voices frustrations, which translated into the Jazz trading him to the Oklahoma City Thunder by the trading deadline. Now with Enes Kanter no longer on the team, it opened up the opportunity for Rudy Gobert to become a full-time starter, and within the last 30 games of the regular season, Gobert became a bona fide double-double player who was averaging nearly 3 blocks a game and was able to accomplish all of that while playing less than 30 minutes a game. The Jazz finished the 2014-2015 season with a record of 38-44, a lot of cap space, and some really promising prospects on their roster. And the young team would continue to build on this momentum. A year later, the Utah Jazz finished with a record of 40-42. Their defense improved from roughly average to a top 10 status, and they were just a hair removed from a playoff appearance. And because of this improvement, as well as Gordon Hayward being on the last year of his contract, the front office decided to go all in, exercise all of their options, and really try to piece together a team that could compete for the playoffs. The Jazz would trade their 12th overall pick to get veteran point guard George Hill, traded Trey Burke for a second-round pick so they can free up some cap space to bring in Joe Johnson, and even traded for veteran forward Boris Diaw. The 2017 Utah Jazz were an impressive bunch. Gordon Hayward reached his full potential, was named an All-Star as he was a near 22-point scorer. Rudy Gobert's impact on the defensive end was undeniable as he was not only named first-team All-Defense but also was selected to an All-NBA team. And those unconventional acquisitions in Joe Ingles and Rodney Hood really started to manifest into quality rotation pieces. By the end of the 2017 season, Utah finished with a record of 51-31. They had a top 3 defense in the league, above average offense, and even were able to make it past the first round against the Los Angeles Clippers, but their playoff run was cut short due to a sweep by the hands of the Golden State Warriors. Now, so far, this sounds like a really good story. Small market team lost 3 marquee players, and yet were still able to bounce back in a very unconventional way. But spoiler alert, we still have a few more really good transactions. Now entering the 2017 draft, the Utah Jazz didn't really have any valuable draft picks. However, if you haven't learned yet, that honestly hasn't really stopped the Utah Jazz from picking up on quality players in the offseason, and this year is no different. On draft night, with the 13th overall pick, the Denver Nuggets selected 6'1" guard out of Louisville, Donovan Mitchell. but immediately traded him to Utah for the Jazz's 24th overall pick and Trey Lyles. So yeah, now making it the second time the Nuggets have basically just traded away an all-star caliber player to the Utah Jazz. I know Nuggets fans, that definitely stings. And what's even more impressive is that it doesn't stop there. Later on in the offseason, it started to become a bit more clear that franchise star Gordon Hayward unfortunately was not going to sign back with the Utah Jazz, which certainly was concerning, and eventually those concerns turned into reality as Gordon Hayward took his talents to Boston to play with his collegiate head coach Brad Stevens. So in an attempt to replace his offensive productivity, Utah had to move fast. Later on the same offseason, George Hill eventually walked in free agency, but was quickly replaced by Ricky Rubio after the Utah Jazz traded a draft pick to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And also the Utah Jazz signed a bunch of other perimeter-oriented players in hopes that their offensive productivity might be able to replace some of what they were going to be missing from Gordon Hayward. Players such as Jerebko, Thabo Sefolosha, and an undrafted prospect by the name of Royce O'Neal. Which means that in a matter of a few weeks, the Utah Jazz traded for Donovan Mitchell and signed Royce O'Neal, two players that they basically didn't give up anything of value to receive. Crazy. And the reason why that is so mind-blowing is because despite the fact that the Utah Jazz just lost Gordon Hayward, they were still winning at a similar rate than the prior year, and it has a lot to do with how impactful Donovan Mitchell was out the gate. Mitchell, alongside Rudy Gobert, a quality supporting cast that saw some turnovers, the most noteworthy one being Joe Johnson and Rodney Hood, but also brought in Jay Crowder, so there was some replacements of some of those players, as well as head coach Quinn Snyder, would still lead this team to an impressive record of 48-34, only a 3-game difference in the win column from the prior year. And again, this is with a rookie Donovan Mitchell practically leading this offense. And what's even more impressive is that the Utah Jazz saw similar postseason success as well, as Donovan Mitchell had a sensational series against the Oklahoma City Thunder before the Jazz's postseason run would be cut short in the second round by the Houston Rockets in 5 games. The 2018-2019 season was very similar to the prior year, which in some way was a positive as it helped build a new standard for what to expect from this Jazz team, but also a negative as well because there were some questions about growth. The Jazz would finish the regular season with a record of 50-32 with an elite level defense led by Rudy Gobert, who finished the season winning his 2nd Defensive Player of the Year award, while the offense was led by the dynamic backcourt of Donovan Mitchell and Ricky Rubio. But in the playoffs, for the 2nd year in a row, the Houston Rockets would knock out the Jazz again in 5 games. Because of the lack of progress, it was obvious that the Jazz had to make some type of changes in the 2019 offseason. And they did just that. Utah traded Derek Favors to the New Orleans Pelicans for 2 second-round picks, allowing them to free up some floor spacing in the front court. They signed a bunch of forwards to replace Derek Favors in Jeff Green, Ed Davis, and Bojan Bogdanovic, but easily the biggest move that the Jazz made in the 2019 offseason was allowing Ricky Rubio to walk in free agency and to replace him with Mike Conley, who they received in a trade after moving Grayson Allen, Jay Crowder, Kyle Korver, and a 1st-round pick. But the Jazz still weren't done yet. After a rough 18-12 start, it was clear that Utah still needed a little bit more firepower in the backcourt, especially coming off the bench. So just a couple of days before Christmas, the Jazz decided to trade Dante Exum, 2 second-round picks, to the Cleveland Cavaliers, and in return they received Jordan Clarkson. This transaction not only is monumental because Jordan Clarkson would turn out to be an amazing bench scorer for the Jazz in the next 18 months, as he's been able to pour it in almost endlessly this year and is definitely going to win 6th Man of the Year. But more importantly, at least when it comes to this video, with Dante Exum being traded off the Jazz, this now means that the entire roster is now built with either trades, undrafted prospects, or other teams' draft picks, which is why this season is so impressive. By the end of the 2019-2020 season, Utah finished with a respectable record of 44-28, and unfortunately for the 2nd straight year was bounced out in the 1st round after blowing a 3-1 lead to the Denver Nuggets. However, here we are now at the tail end of the 2021 NBA season, and somehow the Utah Jazz have not only found themselves at the top of the Western Conference, but as I record this video, they have the best record in the NBA. And no, this is not a fluky season. The Jazz are top 3 in both offense and defense. When it comes to spacing the floor and knocking down the 3 ball, they are elite at that level. They're nearly impossible to stop offensively, not only in thanks to the floor spacing, but also due to the dynamic skill sets that we see in the backcourt while having 2 ball handlers in Mike Conley and Donovan Mitchell man the offense. Defensively, this team will never be below average as long as Rudy Gobert is manning the paint and anchoring that side of the floor. But more importantly, and a big reason why I am a believer of the Utah Jazz, has a lot to do with their bench depth. With players such as Joe Ingles and Jordan Clarkson coming off of the bench, even though yes, this team may not have any top 10 players, they definitely can out-depth any other competitors in the Western Conference. And again, the Jazz were able to build all of this without tanking, without relying on the lottery, without buying superstars, without manipulating the system. With trades, other teams' draft picks, and signing undrafted prospects, the Utah Jazz have put off one of the most impossible rebuilds in the NBA, and we are now looking at one of the best teams in the league. So if you enjoy these type of videos, as always, hit the subscribe button as well as the notification bell so you can be updated when I upload more videos. Also, if you enjoy videos like these, click the playlist on the screen. I have made several videos of unconventional ways that teams have rebuilt their roster. It's something that I kind of do on the channel.